Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast, brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. We have 11 games to choose from on a Wednesday night slate here in the NBA tonight. In this one, we are going to be taking a look at Boston, who may never lose again unless it's tonight in Phoenix. We'll talk about all things there. We've also got the Knicks and Hawks up for you guys, as well as our player props video. So make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. Also want you to head to thelines.com. Nate throws all of our picks up on there, his picks especially, and our player props. So make sure to continue to follow along and also check out that odds finder tool that we have on thelines.com for you guys. You can use that to make sure you're sort of checking out all the sports books and the juice that they are giving you back on the bets you might make in the NBA this season. Nate, let's go ahead and get into this slate and then talk about the C's and Suns.
Yeah, some injury news to watch for the Clippers here at the top, -7 at the Magic, but we don't know if Kawhi and PG are going to keep playing. They did play on Monday, and the Clippers have been going over like that total there. The Lakers are +10 on a back-to-back at Toronto now because Anthony Davis just left after 8 minutes with flu-like symptoms, so he might not be able to play, and they just went in the tank down the stretch without him. Charlotte +10 at Brooklyn. The other game we break down, the Hawks are +2 at the Knicks. Total's kind of high at 232 there at the Garden. Pistons are +10 at the Pelicans. Wiz +5.5 at the Bulls. The Thunder +7 at the Grizz. Kings +7 at the Bucks. Pacers +5 at Wolves. Warriors are +7.5 at the Jazz. Are we still thinking the Warriors just can't win a game on the road? I don't know what's up with that. And then the game we get to here, Celtics -2.5 now at the Suns, creeping up a little bit. The total down 1 point from when I last checked at 230.5.
I also do want to interrupt because if anybody is wondering, Nate, nobody's playing for the Warriors tonight. Make sure you check out who's in the lineup. Wiggs, Curry, and Draymond, all three are out for them.
Classic. And that's kind of relevant to what we're talking about here. This is the third game of a 6-game road trip for the Celtics, who play the Warriors on Saturday. That is their one trip to the Warriors after losing in the finals last season. So, I mean, this has a little bit of a trap game vibe. And not that the Suns are a team you're going to overlook, but it's just not as important. And we talked about in the context of them winning in Toronto on a back-to-back that, look, they're going to have to pick. They're going to need to win the games that are winnable on this really tough 6-game road trip. And they're going to lose at least one, right? I mean, then after that Warriors game, they're back-to-back at the LA teams. I mean, the Celtics they can't literally win every game the rest of the season. I was saying the last time we did a video, like if you blindly clicked, you'd be right most of the time. Yeah. But I think we're going to try to go the opposite way here, zig and zag, with the Phoenix Suns, who are coming off a bad loss of their own and might get Chris Paul back for the first time in a long time. He's been upgraded to questionable. He's been pretty much ruled out for a while. And this is their one home game before a 4-game road trip, including 2 in a row at NOLA, which is a really tough matchup for them with Grand Theft Alvarado playing the way he is. But looking particularly at this matchup, I mean, the Suns have won 2 in a row at home against Boston and really shut down the Celtics offense. And that's not that surprising considering how they guard the 3-point line, how they limit assist to field goal, assist to turnover ratio at home this season, third lowest percentage of points given up off threes. And Boston in those last 2 trips, they shot just 30% from 3, had an average 16-9 assist to turnover ratio, 98 offensive rating, and the games totaled 191 both times. So again, looking at the under here, which has been bet down a tiny bit, but I think 230 or higher, you can take it. You could also tease the Suns up to +6 at home and take the under. I think they can win this game for sure, though, and I like them if Chris Paul's out there. The Celtics should have everybody. Brogdon should be back. But, I mean, their defense has kind of tipped back up while their offense has tipped down a little bit. I mean, there's nowhere to go but down when you're shooting 41% from 3, which would be an NBA record if they can maintain that along with their offensive rating. But it's a tough matchup for the 3-ball. It's a good matchup for their defense, though, right? Because they limit free throws, they limit assist to turnover ratio, and on the road in particular, number 3 in 2-point percentage allowed, which is how the Suns score. They're not the best 3-point shooting team. They are the mid-range kings. And I'm looking at the Suns to win, though, because of the bounce back spot, because of how they perform at home and with a slight rest advantage here. 25-6 with a rest advantage since 2021. 6-1 after a loss this season. Those games have gone under, 21-9 to the under after a loss since the start of last season. So I think the Suns bring a defensive effort. Would be nice if they have Torrey Craig out there. He's questionable to stick on Tatum. But you look at from a coaching and team perspective, what each team has been able to do to the other star. Because if you're taking a Suns over, it's because Devin Booker is just going to have a mind-blowing efficiency night, right? And his last 3 against Boston, 18 points per game, 36% from the floor, 18% from deep, 93 rating. And then Tatum's last 3 against the Suns, 21 points per game on a 93 offensive rating. So they both have a good recipe for slowing down the other team's superstar.
Yeah, for sure. I think under is the play here to feel safe, to feel good about it, because this game could still kind of go either way, in my opinion. You're going to need a complete dud from the Celtics for them to not be hanging in pretty much every game that they're playing this season. If they play even close to as well as they can play, especially on offense right now, they're going to be hanging around at the very least, if not winning the majority of the games that they're playing. The road splits for them, I think you can lean a little bit towards the under as well. I know the Suns are just an efficient offensive machine at home. It's kind of wild how good they are at home on offense, and not quite the same team on defense. They are in terms of their defense at home for the Suns. It's much better than on the road as well. So I mean, there's a reason that they're 12-2 at home this season and just 4-6 on the road. Whereas with the Celtics, yeah, they're not as good on offense on the road, but that's because you can't score 126 points per game every building you play in. They're just leaving that for home, I guess. It's beating teams by an average of 11.5 points a game right now at home. On the road, they're still winning. They're 9-3, winning by an average of 5 points per game. Their 3-point percentage only dips to 39.7 from 40.7 when they're on the road versus at home. And that Phoenix defense is all about limiting threes, right? It's if they're giving them up, their percentage that they allow is 37% to their opponent, the Suns. So it's not like they're limiting teams' makes. They're just limiting their attempts, and that's why their makes are down to the top 6 in the league, right? They're only allowing 11 made threes a game, but that's because they're only allowing 30 attempts a game, whereas the Knicks, being dead last, are allowing 40 attempts a game, right, from 3. So if you can, we've said it this season, we've said it talking about different teams who have sort of accepted the 3-point barrage that's happening in the NBA, and they just go, we're not going to try to stop you from making every single one. We just need to make sure you don't shoot as many as when you get down low, and that's kind of their philosophy on offense as well. I mean, they will take the 3-pointer if it's there, but they're definitely looking to move the ball around, get Devin Booker in space, and then allow him to cook, especially when Chris Paul's not in there. I think you have too much for the Celtics. You talked about the slight turnaround on defense for them as well, and that's going to be pretty huge in this game. If they want to go toe to toe with the Suns, they can, but I think that they realize that if they're not going to be able to shoot as many threes as they want, then they have to play a little bit better defense, right? Because if you're not going to get the same style of play on offense that they've been getting, pace and space and just threes, barrage of threes, because nobody can stay in front of both of these guys at the same time in terms of JB and Jason Tatum, then yeah, you're going to have guys open on the wing, and I think they'll get they'll have a few more threes than maybe most teams against the Suns, but that limiting factor for them I think is huge in how that they'll play on offense. The other thing that I would add to allow to feel good about the under here is sort of the way that Phoenix limits and they get a lot of points of turnovers and they limit things like that, but so do the Celtics. They get back on defense. We've talked about their transition D being really, really, really good, getting back and limiting points off turnovers, which is what the Suns want to do, is get points off turnovers. Second chance points as well. I give a little bit of advantage obviously to Phoenix without Rob Will in there, but I think that's okay as well when Boston's 2-point defense continues to be as good as it is inside the arc and inside 15 feet, even in terms of opponents' points in the paint. So yeah, I'm not really going to bet against the Celtics yet. I know that this would be the moment to sort of get ahead of it, but the fact that Booker doesn't play well, and that's going to, if Tatum doesn't play well, there's plenty of options. Booker doesn't play well, I'm not really sure I want to rely on Campaign to be the focal point of the offense.
You're right. I mean, if Chris Paul is not playing, I don't think you feel super confident about the Suns winning this game, but they are great at home. There are plenty of numbers to suggest that they will bounce back from a loss. And you talked about their defense and DeAndre Ayton being the kind of big man that it's tough to get in rotation and tough to beat on those pick and rolls. And he has a great defensive rating his last few against Boston. Interesting that they haven't really faced Boston since the Boston became a monster at the turn of the year last year. The Celtics actually, like, one of their few wins while they still sucked at the end of 2021 was against Phoenix at home towards the end of that year. But yeah, so I mean, some of their awful offensive numbers are partly because they couldn't get it together. But at the same time, I think that's why Chris Paul plays. I think that's why the Suns come out and Mikal Bridges takes on the challenge of guarding Tatum and Brown, and that they're going to bounce back here. So yeah, I mean, we're really just kind of having some fun with it, trying to predict the Celtics decline here. But I think if you're serious about the bet here and you want to put some heavy units, I think under makes a lot more sense when you talk about all those home road splits and the fact the Celtics are 11-2 to the over at home and now 3-8 to the under on the road, going under by 1 point in Toronto. Also would have gone under in 3 straight if not for that Jaylen Brown miracle bank. They would have averaged just 214 total in their last 3 games here. So I think under is a good play.
Yeah, agreed. And lastly, I would say if Chris Paul does play, I like the under more as well. With him, they have 107 defensive rating in 14 games this season. Without him in 10 games, they've got 115.5 defensive rating. So 8 more points per 100 possessions that they're giving up when CP3 is not on the floor, in part because of that defense at the top of the key, and he knows when to hound guys. Also, because of the fact that in that fourth quarter when he's in there, it's just slowed all the way down, and they're basically like a soccer team who's just keeping possession before they sort of put an efficient bucket up. So that also helps slow the game down in the fourth quarter when he's in there. So there's a lot of reasons to like the under, especially if Chris Paul plays, but I think that's my favorite bet regardless. So that is all the time we have for you, though. In this one, make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along with us. We'll be back with you guys each and every weekday of this regular season. So until we see you next, happy betting.